The story begins in 1980s Hawkins, Indiana, where a scientist at a research facility gets attacked by some creature. Meanwhile, 4 kids named Mike, Will, Lucas, and Dustin are playing Dungeons & Dragons at Mike's house. When the game ends, everyone heads home, but on his way back, Will encounters something inhuman on the road and crashes his bike. He runs home, but no one is there to help him. Will grabs a gun and hides in the shed, but the creature appears behind him and he vanishes into thin air. The next morning, Will's mom Joyce and brother Jonathan notice he's missing. Police Chief Hopper starts investigating while Joyce contacts Will's dad, Lonnie, thinking he might have taken Will. At the research facility, men in hazmat suits investigate the damage done by the creature and mention that the girl couldn't have gotten far. That same girl, with a shaved head and hospital gown, sneaks into a local diner and steals food. The owner, Benny, decides to help her and calls child services, but the woman who shows up is actually from the lab. She kills Benny and the girl escapes using telekinetic powers. Will's friends decide to search the woods themselves that night. They don't find Will, but instead discover that strange girl nearly frozen. They take her to Mike's basement, where she reveals her name is 11, showing the number tattooed on her arm. The boys let her stay hidden since getting parents involved would get them all grounded. 11 doesn't talk much and seems unfamiliar with basic things like privacy. Through flashbacks, we learn she was raised in Hawkins' lab by Dr. Brenner, who she calls Papa. He conducted experiments on her, training her telekinetic abilities and keeping her locked in isolation when she disobeyed. Meanwhile, at the high school, Mike's older sister, Nancy, starts dating popular guy Steve Harrington. Hopper investigates Benny's death, which has been staged to look like a suicide. He also finds Will's bike abandoned near his house and calls for a search party. When the search leads near Hawkins' lab, Hopper tries to investigate, but the staff shows him security footage proving no one came through. However, Hopper notices the footage shows no rain, even though that night had a heavy storm, meaning the tape is fake. The boys ask 11 to help find Will. She goes to their Dungeons & Dragons board, picks up Will's game piece, flips the board upside down, and places him there. She says Will is hiding from something, then points to the Demogorgon monster piece. The boys realize Will might be trapped in some kind of parallel dimension. Joyce starts experiencing strange things at home. She gets phone calls with static and faint breathing, and the lights flicker in unusual patterns. She becomes convinced these are signs from Will trying to communicate. She sets up Christmas lights all over the house and creates an alphabet on the wall so Will can spell out messages. Using these lights, Will confirms he's alive but tells her to run when the creature appears. A monster hand pushes through the wall before retreating. Nancy's friend Barb comes with her to a small party at Steve's house. While Nancy goes upstairs with Steve, Barb sits alone by the pool. She cuts her hand on a beer can and blood drips in the water. The Demogorgon appears and drags her into the pool. Barb wakes up in a dark nightmare version of the same location, the pool drained and covered in strange vines. The creature attacks her. Jonathan, feeling guilty for not being home the night Will disappeared, goes searching in the woods with his camera. He ends up near Steve's house and takes photos from the bushes. Nancy finds one of his photos showing a strange blurry figure in the background. She and Jonathan team up to investigate. They discover the monster is attracted to blood. Hopper digs deeper into Hawkins' lab and finds newspaper articles about MK Ultra experiments. Later, police pull a body from the local quarry that appears to be Will. The boys are devastated, but 11 insists Will is still alive. Mike lashes out at 11 for supposedly lying, but she proves herself by channeling Will's voice through his walkie-talkie, singing his favorite song. The boys take 11 to the middle school to use their radio equipment. She channels Will's voice through the static. They can hear him calling for his mom while the creature roars nearby. Unfortunately, this drains the radio until it explodes. Joyce also refuses to believe the body is real. Hopper sneaks in the morgue and cuts open the corpse, finding it stuffed with cotton. It's completely fake. He breaks in the lab at night and discovers a child's room that looks more like a prison cell. In the basement, he finds a large, pulsing gate to a different dimension before guards capture him. He wakes up at home but finds a listening device hidden in his lights, confirming the government is covering something up. Nancy follows strange sounds into the woods and finds a hole in a tree trunk. She crawls through and ends up in the Upside Down, a dark, decaying mirror version of Hawkins. She sees the Demogorgon eating a deer and tries to escape. Jonathan hears her screaming from the other side and pulls her back through just before the hole closes. The boys figure out that 11 can locate Will if they build a sensory deprivation tank. Then she locates Will hiding in the Upside Down version of his fort at Castle Byers. Joyce speaks to him through 11, promising she's coming to get him. Hopper makes a deal with Dr. Brenner. He'll reveal 11's location in exchange for safe passage to the Upside Down to rescue Will. Joyce and Hopper suit up in hazmat gear and enter through the gate at Hawkins' Hawkins' lab. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan set up a trap at the Byers' house, using bear traps, gasoline, and weapons. They cut their hands to draw the monster with blood. Steve shows up to apologize to Jonathan for their earlier fight. Before he can leave, the Demogorgon attacks. Steve grabs a baseball bat and helps fight it off. They lure the creature into the trap and set it on fire, but when the flames die down, the monster is gone. Government agents storm the school looking for Eleven. She uses her powers to kill several of them, but she's exhausted. Dr. Brenner corners the kids and tries to convince Eleven to come back. Then the Demogorgon bursts through the wall, drawn by all the blood from the dead agents. In the chaos, Brenner is attacked and presumably killed. The kids escape to a classroom, but the Demogorgon finds them. Lucas hits it with his slingshot, but it does nothing. Eleven steps forward to protect her friends. She pins the creature against the wall with her powers and tells Mike goodbye. Then she screams, and both she and the Demogorgon disintegrate into nothing. In the Upside Down, Hopper and Joyce follow the trail through the nightmare version of Hawkins. They find Will in the library, unconscious and connected to a vine down his throat. Hopper pulls it out and performs CPR. Will finally breathes again, and they carry him back through the gate. 1 month later, everything seems back to normal. The four boys reunite to play Dungeons and Dragons. Will wins by rolling high against a monster. Nancy is back together with Steve, but she gives Jonathan a new camera as a gift. Hopper leaves a box of Eggo waffles in the woods, Eleven's favorite food, suggesting he believes she's still alive somewhere. At Christmas dinner, Will excuses himself to the bathroom. He suddenly flashes to the Upside Down for a moment and coughs up a small slug-like creature into the sink. He looks at himself in the mirror, shaken but hiding it. He returns to dinner and tells his mom everything is fine, but clearly something from that other world is still inside him. The story picks up almost a year after the Demogorgon's attack. Will is back home, but still experiencing terrifying visions of the Upside Down. He sees a massive, shadowy creature in the sky during these episodes. Joyce is now dating a kind man named Bob Newby, who works at the local Radio Shack and genuinely cares for her family. Meanwhile, Eleven is revealed to be alive. After being blasted to the Upside Down at the end of Season 1, she escaped and hid in the woods. Hopper eventually found her and has been secretly keeping her at his cabin, where she lives in hiding, eating Eggos and watching TV. In Pittsburgh, we meet a gang of misfits led by a girl named Callie who has psychic abilities to create illusions. When she escapes from police, we see her wrist tattoo read 008, meaning she was another test subject from Hawkins' lab like Eleven. Back at Hawkins, the boys befriend a new girl at school named Max. Her older stepbrother, Billy, is aggressive and controlling. Dustin finds a strange little creature in his trash can, names it Dart, and keeps it as a pet. This turns out to be a terrible decision, as Dart grows into a Demodog, a dog-like creature from the Upside Down. Will's visions get worse. He sees the shadow monster, later called the Mind Flayer, and it eventually attacks him. After this, Will starts behaving strangely, because the Mind Flayer had possessed him. Through Will, the Mind Flayer can see and hear everything happening around him. Hopper discovers a network of tunnels spreading under Hawkins, connected to the Upside Down. He gets trapped down there while investigating. Will, still connected to the Mind Flayer, is able to sense where Hopper is located. Joyce and Bob use Will's drawings to figure out the tunnel system and rescue Hopper just in time. Eleven grows tired of being cooped up in the cabin. She discovers files about her real mother, Terry Ives, and runs away to find her. When Eleven reaches Terry, she finds her mother in a catatonic state, unable to speak. But Terry shows Eleven her memories telepathically, including images of another girl from the lab named Callie. Eleven decides to hitchhike to Chicago to find her sister. In Chicago, Eleven joins Callie's group of outcasts who hunt down former Hawkins lab employees for revenge. They find a man who helped torture Eleven's mother. He reveals that Dr. Brenner may still be alive, but during the confrontation, Eleven senses her friends back in Hawkins are in danger. She leaves Kelly behind and heads home. Back in Hawkins, the group realizes the Mind Flayer is using Will as a spy. They sedate him so he cannot report their location. Scientists at Hawkins' lab try to burn the tunnels, which causes Will to scream in agony because he is linked to the creature. The burning triggers a counterattack. Demodogs swarm Hawkins' lab, killing scientists and trapping Joyce, Bob, Hopper, Mike, and Will inside. Bob volunteers to go down to the basement and restore the power so everyone can escape. He successfully turns the power back on and guides everyone to safety. But just when Bob seems to have made it out, a Demodog attacks him and kills him right in front of Joyce. Everyone gathers at the Byers' house. Dustin explains that the shadow monster behaves like the Mind Flayer from Dungeons and Dragons, a creature that wants to dominate everything. including Will. They attempt to force the Mind Flayer out of Will by superheating the shed, since the creature hates warmth. During this process, Will manages to tap out a message in Morse code revealing the only solution: close the gate beneath the lab. 11 arrives just in time. While Hopper takes her down to the gate at the Hawkins lab, the kids make a distraction by setting fires in the tunnel network. Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy continue heating Hopper's cabin to force the Mind Flayer out of Will's body. 11 reaches the gate just as the Mind Flayer pushes through from the other side. She unleashes her full power and seals the gate, instantly killing all the demo dogs and freeing Will from the Mind Flayer's control. 1 month later at the Snowball Dance, everything seems peaceful, but in the final shot, the Mind Flayer looms over the upside-down version of Hawkins Middle School, watching and waiting. It is still out there and very angry. Season 3 takes place in the summer of 1985. The town has a new attraction called Starcourt Mall, which has become the main hangout spot. Mike and 11 spend most of their time together, which frustrates Hopper. Joyce is still grieving Bob's death and considers moving away from Hawkins. Strange things begin happening again. Joyce notices the magnets on her refrigerator keep falling off. She teams up with Hopper to investigate, and discovers the magnetic disturbances are connected to something at the mall. At the same time, Dustin returns from science camp and intercepts a strange coded Russian transmission on his radio equipment. Billy, Max's stepbrother who now works as a lifeguard at the community pool, becomes the first victim of a new threat. After a car crash near the old steel mill, he is dragged inside by a creature made of melted rats. The Mind Flayer possesses him and begins using him to recruit more victims. These possessed people are called the Flayed. At the mall, Dustin teams up with Steve, who works at an ice cream shop called Scoops Ahoy, along with Steve's co-worker Robert and Lucas's little sister Erica. They investigate the Russian transmission and discover a hidden elevator that leads to a massive underground base beneath Starcourt. The Russians are building a machine designed to reopen the gate to the Upside Down. Nancy and Jonathan, working at the local newspaper, investigate reports of rats behaving strangely. They discover these rats are exploding to form a living material for a new creature. The Mind Flayer is building itself a physical body using the melted flesh of both rats and possessed humans. Mike and 11 notice Billy acting suspiciously. They test him by trapping him in a sauna at the pool, which confirms he is possessed since the creature reacts violently to heat. Billy breaks free and remains under the Mind Flayer's control. Joyce and Hopper capture a Russian scientist named Alexei, who explains the entire Starcourt operation. The Russians paid off the mayor to build the mall as a cover for their underground base. The machine requires an enormous amount of power, which is why electricity around Hawkins has been unstable. 11 uses her powers to enter Billy's mind and seize his memories, including his happiest childhood moment with his mother before his abusive father ruined his life. But the mental connection works both ways. The Mind Flayer now knows exactly where 11 is located. The Mind Flayer's physical form, a massive spider-like creature made of melted flesh, attacks Hopper's cabin. During the fight, a piece of the creature bites 11's leg and burrows inside. Jonathan cuts it out, but the damage is done. Steve, Robin, Dustin, and Erica get trapped in the Russian base but manage to escape. They rejoin the larger group at the mall. Joyce, Hopper, and Murray head back to the underground base to shut down the machine manually, while the kids take shelter in Starcourt. The Mind Flayer corners the group at the mall. Billy captures 11 and brings her to the creature. But before the Mind Flayer can kill her, 11 reaches Billy emotionally. This causes Billy to break free from the Mind Flayer's control. He turns and physically holds back the monster to protect 11. The Mind Flayer impales Billy multiple times, killing him. In his final moments, Billy apologizes to Max. Below the mall, Hopper fights the Russian enforcer Grigori and kills him by throwing him into the machine, but this traps Hopper on the wrong side of the blast zone. Joyce must activate the shutdown to close the gate. She looks at Hopper, who nods for her to do it. She turns the key, destroying the machine, and closes the gate. The Mind Flayer's physical form collapses and dies above. 3 months later, Joyce decides to move away from Hawkins. As they pack up the house, 11 struggles with having lost her powers. She reads a heartfelt letter Hopper had written but never gave her. In the post-credits scene set in Russia, guards at a prison discuss a prisoner they refer to as the American. They then feed a captured prisoner to a Demogorgon, revealing the Upside Down is still active elsewhere in the world. Season 4 begins in spring of 1986. 11 struggles at school without her powers and faces bullying. Mike plans to visit during spring break. Back in Hawkins, the rest of the group adjusts to high school. Lucas has joined the basketball team. Dustin and Mike are part of the Hellfire Club, a Dungeons & Dragons group led by a senior named Eddie Eddie Munson. Everything changes when a student named Chrissy Cunningham dies mysteriously in Eddie's trailer. Eddie becomes the prime suspect and goes into hiding. Dustin, Mike, Max, Lucas, Steve, Robert, and Nancy believe something from the Upside Down is responsible. Max begins experiencing the same symptoms Chrissy had before she died. They realize she may be the next target. In California, Dr. Owens visits Eleven and explains a new threat is emerging in Hawkins. He offers her a chance to regain her powers through a program run by someone she thought was dead, Dr. Brenner. Eleven agrees and is taken to a secret facility in Nevada where she begins reliving suppressed memories to rebuild her abilities. Through these memories, Eleven learns the truth about the lab's history. She meets a friendly orderly who helps her and teaches her to use her powers better, but she discovers this orderly is actually Henry Creel, the lab's first test subject, designated as 001. Years ago, Brenner implanted a chip in Henry's neck to suppress his powers because he could not control him. Henry was originally a normal boy. He used his powers to torture and kill his mother and sister, then framed his father, Victor, for the murders. Dr. Brenner found Henry and made him the first test subject. In 1979, Henry tricked young Eleven into removing the chip from his neck. Once his powers returned, he massacred everyone in the lab. Using the memory of her mother's love to fuel her power, Eleven overpowered Henry and accidentally opened a gate, sending him to the Upside Down. In that dimension, Henry transformed over years into a horrifying creature. Vecna is revealed to be the mastermind behind all the evil from the Upside Down, including his control over the Mind Flayer. Meanwhile, in Russia, Hopper is revealed to be alive but imprisoned in a Soviet labor camp. Joyce receives a message that he is still alive. She and Murray travel to Alaska to arrange his rescue through a shady contract. After many complications, including a prison riot, Joyce and Murray break in the prison to reunite with Hopper and fight Demogorgons that the Russians have been keeping captive. Back in Hawkins, Nancy and Robin investigate Victor Creel, who has been locked in a psychiatric hospital since 1959 for supposedly murdering his family. Victor tells them about a demon that attacked his family, not knowing it was actually his own son, Henry. The group discovers that Vecna targets teenagers who are struggling with guilt or trauma. They also discover that music can break his hold on victims. Max narrowly escapes death when her friends play her favorite song, Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, through her headphones. In California, Mike, Will, Jonathan, and their friend Argyle search for Eleven after government agents attack the facility. They eventually track her down and head to Nevada to reunite. Max volunteers to use herself as bait to help the others locate Vecna's physical body in the Upside Down. Steve, Nancy, and Robin travel through a gate to the Upside Down to attack Vecna directly at the Creel house. Eddie and Dustin stay at Eddie's trailer to create a distraction. When the bats swarm their location, Eddie tells Dustin to escape while he stays behind to buy more time. Eddie fights the demo bats, but is overwhelmed. He dies in Dustin's arms. Max allows herself to fall into Vecna's mind to keep him distracted. Eleven, now with her powers restored, enters Max's mind from thousands of miles away to help fight Vecna. In Russia, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray fight the captive Demogorgons to weaken the creatures connected to Vecna through the hive mind. Steve, Nancy, and Robin attack Vecna's physical body with fire and shotguns, severely wounding him. Eleven confronts Vecna in the mindscape and pushes him back, but Vecna still manages to injure Max severely. Eleven uses her powers to restart Max's heart, bringing her back, but Max's death, even though brief, was enough to open a fourth gate. Vecna escapes, badly wounded, but alive. 2 days later, all the main characters reunite in Hawkins. The Upside Down is now seeping directly into the real world. Max remains in a coma at the hospital. As the group observes the spreading damage across town, the Upside Down's invasion of Hawkins has begun, and Vecna's threat is far from over.